Why do fans feel Jungkook's presence changing every single day, even when nothing obvious has happened? Is this invisible shift real, or something deeper no one can explain? Stay until the end and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as we uncover a quiet aura that refuses to be ignored. What if the most powerful change is the one you cannot see, but somehow feel more clearly with each passing day? What if nothing obvious has happened, yet everything feels different? And what if the reason you keep noticing it is because it was never meant to be visible, only experienced? Before you move on, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, have you felt it too? That quiet shift, that subtle difference, that almost unexplainable pull every time you watch Jungkook now. Not something dramatic, not something easy to describe, but something that lingers, something that stays with you even after the moment ends. At first, everything seemed exactly the same. The same presence, the same expressions, the same connection that had always existed. Nothing stood out in a way that demanded attention. Nothing signaled that anything had changed. It all felt consistent, almost as if time itself had paused, preserving everything in a familiar state. But then quietly something began to shift. Not in a way that could be clearly pointed out. Not in a way that could be immediately explained. But in a way that could be felt. A deeper stillness. A quieter intensity. A presence that seemed to carry more weight than before, even when nothing specific had changed on the surface. And for a while it remained just that, a feeling. Unspoken. Undefined. Easy to overlook, yet impossible to completely ignore. Until people started to notice. Not all at once. Not in the same moment. But gradually. Individually. Until that quiet awareness began to connect. Because when enough people begin to feel the same thing, even without direct conversation, it becomes something real. Something shared. Something that exists beyond individual perception. And that is where this invisible shift begins to take form. There is something uniquely powerful about a change that cannot be seen, because it does not rely on visuals to exist. It does not depend on clear evidence. It lives in perception, in emotion, in the way something resonates without needing to be fully understood. And that is exactly what people are experiencing now. The aura feels different. Not drastically, not dramatically, but consistently. A presence that feels more grounded, more inward, more layered in a way that invites attention rather than demanding it. And that subtle difference is enough to change everything. Because once perception shifts, everything else follows. Moments that once felt simple now feel deeper. Expressions that once passed without thought now invite reflection. Silence itself begins to carry meaning. This is where the emotional connection intensifies. Because recognizing something invisible creates a different kind of awareness. It feels more intuitive, more personal, more real. It is not about what is being shown, but about what is being felt. And that feeling does not fade. It grows. With each new moment. With each new observation. With each realization that the change is not temporary, but ongoing. There is also a growing sense that this shift is not something new, but something that has been developing quietly over time. Something that has reached a point where it can no longer remain unnoticed. And that realization adds depth, because it suggests that what people are feeling now is not the beginning, but the result. The outcome of something internal that has evolved gradually, now becoming present in ways that cannot be ignored. And when something internal begins to shape external presence, even subtly, it transforms everything. It changes how moments are experienced, how expressions are interpreted, how connection is understood. And once that transformation is recognized, it cannot be unseen, or in this case, unfelt. This is why the aura feels so compelling now. Not because it is louder or more obvious, but because it is deeper. More consistent, more real in a way that does not need explanation. There is also something about the invisibility of this shift that makes it even more powerful, because without clear definition, it remains open. It invites interpretation. It allows each person to connect with it in their own way. And that openness creates a stronger bond, because it is not forced. It is discovered. It is felt. It is understood quietly without needing words. As time continues, this awareness does not fade into familiarity. Instead, it becomes stronger. More people begin to feel it. More people begin to notice it. More people begin to recognize that something has changed, even if they cannot fully explain what that change is. And that shared recognition is what keeps the story alive, because it transforms something invisible into something undeniable, something subtle into something significant, something quiet into something that continues to draw attention day after day. There is also a sense that this aura will continue to evolve, that it is not fixed, that it will keep changing, keep deepening, revealing new layers over time. And that idea adds a sense of anticipation, because it means that what people are feeling now is only part of a larger journey. A journey that is ongoing. A journey that cannot be fully captured in a single moment. A journey that continues to unfold, quietly, steadily, in ways that may not always be visible, but are always present. And perhaps that is what makes it so unforgettable. Not the need to fully understand it, but the experience of feeling it as it happens. So if you find yourself noticing it again, feeling that same quiet difference, recognizing that something has shifted in a way that cannot be undone, then you are part of this story. A story that does not rely on clear answers. A story that continues through perception, through emotion, through the shared experience of sensing something that exists beyond words. Because sometimes the most powerful presence is not the one you can clearly see, but the one you continue to feel even when you cannot explain why. And as that feeling continues to linger, something even more intriguing begins to unfold. A realization that this invisible shift is no longer just something people notice occasionally, but something that steadily shapes how every new moment is experienced. It becomes a quiet constant, a subtle undercurrent that follows each appearance of Jungkook, turning even the simplest interactions into something that feels layered with meaning. There is a growing sense that time itself feels different when people are watching now. Moments don't just pass. They settle. They stay. They invite attention in a way that feels almost instinctive, as if something beneath the surface is asking to be noticed without ever demanding it directly. And that is where the shift becomes undeniable. Not because it suddenly becomes visible, but because it becomes impossible to ignore. There is something about the way silence now carries weight. A pause no longer feels empty. It feels intentional. A still expression no longer feels neutral. It feels full of something unspoken. Even the smallest movement seems to carry a quiet significance that wasn't always there before. And once that awareness sets in, it begins to change everything. Because people are no longer just watching what happens. They are feeling what it means. They are connecting to something that exists beyond the surface, something that does not need to be explained to be understood on a deeper level. This is where the invisible shift becomes something more than perception. It becomes presence. A presence that feels grounded, steady, and quietly powerful. A presence that does not rely on intensity or obvious change, but on consistency, on depth, on the subtle ways it continues to draw people in without ever needing to ask for attention. There is also a growing realization that this kind of presence cannot be easily recreated or imitated.